he outran his own troops in the confusion of the exploitation of his battlefield success at Chancellorsville. Lee missed him sorely, for he had no other lieutenant with his skill at seizing the initiative in battle. Had Jackson lived to command the right or left wing at Gettysburg, the Confederacy might be approaching its 150th year of independence today. And while his penchant for extreme personal hardship, pushing himself to exhaustion, sleeping outdoors in the roughest weather, at times even refusing proper clothing and protection, set an admirable example and perhaps was the reason in part for the incredible bond he enjoyed with his troops, it also cost thousands of lives. He was simply out on his feet for much of the 7 days battle, where he actually was responsible for the bulk of Lee's army and the main effort to crush McClellan on the peninsula. Asleep, mumbling incoherently, lost, unresponsive to colleagues, his intellect and battlefield judgment failed, and the South suffered thousands of casualties while Jackson floundered. While Lee took much of the blame, and Jackson's reputation shielded him somewhat, a fresh, alert, engaged Jackson might have delivered a devastating defeat of McClellan, instead of simply pushing McClellan back toward his base. Worse yet, it was Jackson who did this to himself, unnecessarily. Sloppy foresight and personal planning cost him several nights of essential rest. Commanders owe it to their troops to maintain their mental qualities throughout a long campaign, and must take care of themselves accordingly. It may be necessary, and even okay, to push the troops so hard they're literally asleep on their feet, but for a commander to do it to himself through carelessness is just inexcusable. Today we call it sleep discipline, and talk about it often in military training. But it is also simple common sense. Finally, Jackson's brittle temperament, he was quick to fault others and unforgiving in response, and tendency to pick fawning friends rather than proven performers for promotion, were character traits which would have been totally debilitating in higher command. Too often, Lee saved him from himself. So why read about Stonewall Jackson? To understand battle and war, to learn leadership from Jackson's successes and failures, and to ponder again the mysteries of human nature and our American heritage. For time and again we see that individual men and women do make a difference. The character, skill, competence of a single person at a crucial point can change history. Stonewall Jackson was just such a leader, and that's why you should read this book. General Wesley K. Clark. Introduction. The day was his. Stonewall Jackson had swung 28,000 soldiers out of the front line, moved them across the front of the enemy, outflanked the Union Army, and unleashed a surprise afternoon attack that utterly crushed the Federal Corps on the right flank. From being static on the defensive before a superior enemy force, Jackson had seized the initiative and now held one of the most important battles of the Civil War in his hands. As April changed to May in 1863, Union General Fighting Joe Hooker crossed the Rappahannock River with the Army of the Potomac, went around the rebels entrenched at Fredericksburg, and began concentrating the bulk of his 135,000 men near a cluster of buildings known as Chancellorsville. Robert E. Lee had about 54,000 men to stop him. Then Hooker made the mistake of pausing in the desolate wilderness to gather his forces for the big push. This allowed time for the Confederates to catch their breath. Stonewall Jackson was sniffling from a cold when Lee joined him at a campfire in the dark hours before dawn on May 2nd. The South's two most aggressive leaders decided to take one of the biggest gambles of the war, splitting the main defensive force and letting Jackson take the rest on the dangerous sweep to find the enemy's flank. Stonewall Jackson seldom smiled, but he had to be pleased. He was the best fighting general in the rebel army and had spent the past 2 years bedeviling the Union with unorthodox tactics that led to victory after victory. A supremely modest man, the lieutenant general's name was known around the world. Federal generals always worried that he would show up where he was least expected, to do the impossible. It was his specialty, and he was about to do it again. Shrouded in early morning